It was a quiet Monday evening when the 5 p.m. ransom deadline passed without public resolution. The silence felt heavy, and in moments like that, people look for meaning in every movement and memory. That same day, 86-year-old Tom Brokaw, the longtime anchor of NBC Nightly News, gathered privately with a small circle of friends at his New York home. There were no cameras, no recordings, no dramatic statements prepared for broadcast. Just conversation. What he shared, according to those present, was not a revelation about the investigation itself. It was a reflection on character, specifically on Savannah Guthrie, and the quiet strength she has displayed in recent days. Brokaw did not speak to inflame speculation. He spoke as someone who has watched colleagues endure public trials and private pain, and who understands the difference between composure and indifference. Strength learned. Early Brokaw reportedly began by recalling Savannah's early years at NBC, when she was new, polished, and deeply disciplined. He described noticing a seriousness about her, not coldness, but focus. Over time, he came to understand that much of that steadiness reflected the example set by her mother, Nancy. Raising children after profound loss requires resilience, and Brokaw suggested that Savannah grew up witnessing that resilience daily. Discipline, calm thinking, and measured response were not simply professional tools. They were family values. He was careful not to characterize this upbringing as harsh or unloving. Instead, he described it as practical, rooted in the belief that strength prepares a person to face a difficult world. In moments of crisis, people often return to the earliest lessons they learned about how to cope. Composure under pressure. Those who know Savannah's career at Today have long noted her ability to remain steady during breaking news. Brokaw reportedly pointed out that the same structure and clarity she uses on air appear in her recent public messages. She thanks supporters first. She speaks carefully. She avoids dramatic language. Rather than rushing to speak immediately, she waited until she could do so thoughtfully. Brokaw's interpretation was not that this indicates emotional distance, but that it reflects discipline. Journalists are trained to gather information, verify facts, and choose words precisely. When facing a personal crisis in the public eye, that instinct can become even stronger. For someone accustomed to guiding viewers through uncertainty, composure may feel like the most responsible way to lead, even when the situation is deeply personal. The difference between control and care. In the private discussion, Brokaw reportedly drew a distinction between control and love. Maintaining composure does not mean a lack of feeling. In fact, he suggested, it may signal the opposite. When emotions are intense, some individuals tighten their focus rather than unravel. Brokaw emphasized that throughout his decades in journalism, covering wars, elections, and national tragedies, he has seen many forms of grief. Some are outward and visible. Others are quiet and contained. Neither is more authentic than the other. Savannah's steadiness, he implied, should not be mistaken for absence of fear or pain. Instead, it may be the way she protects herself and those around her during uncertainty. Public silence and private process. The timeline of public statements has prompted questions from observers. Brokaw reportedly cautioned against reading too much into silence. In investigations, families are often advised to communicate carefully and deliberately. Silence can reflect coordination with authorities rather than emotional detachment. Savannah's background in law and journalism reinforces that instinct. Words carry weight. Statements can influence outcomes. Waiting to speak until messaging is clear may reflect responsibility rather than hesitation. Brokaw's central message was patience. Allow investigators to work, allow families to process, and avoid turning private anguish into spectacle. In times of crisis, speculation can compound stress rather than relieve it. The human story beneath headlines. What stood out most from Brokaw's remarks was his focus on humanity over drama. He reportedly expressed concern that public narratives sometimes reduce complex family dynamics to simplistic conclusions. A daughter's composure should not be interpreted as emotional distance from her mother, nor should measured language be framed as calculation. Brokaw described Savannah as someone who cares deeply about honoring her family's values, particularly dignity and steadiness. That desire to uphold those values in front of a national audience can add an additional layer of pressure. Yet it can also serve as an anchor, something firm to hold on to when circumstances feel unstable. Compassion over assumption. Brokaw's reflections were not a critique of parenting styles, nor an analysis of psychological motives. They were, according to those present, an appeal for compassion. He acknowledged that every family develops its own language of love. In some households, affection is expressed openly and emotionally. In others, it is shown through reliability, discipline, and presence. Neither approach cancels out care. Savannah's public demeanor may simply mirror the language of strength she grew up understanding. Rather than framing that as rigid or unyielding, Brokaw encouraged colleagues to view it as one possible expression of devotion. The cost of living in the spotlight. Few people understand the pressure of public life better than Brokaw. Decades at the helm of a nightly news broadcast taught him that cameras amplify everything. He reportedly reflected on how difficult it must be to navigate a family emergency while millions analyze tone, posture, and timing. When someone's professional identity centers on clarity and composure, stepping outside that identity can feel disorienting. Brokaw did not suggest that Savannah is immune to emotion. On the contrary, he acknowledged that strength can be exhausting. The ability to remain poised during adversity often requires tremendous internal energy, especially when the stakes are personal. A hope for understanding. As the evening at his home concluded, Brokaw reportedly expressed a simple hope that whatever unfolds next, empathy will guide public reaction. Investigations require careful attention, and families deserve privacy and space to process. He did not predict outcomes, nor did he speculate on motives. Instead, he returned to the theme that defined his reflections: understanding the human being behind the headlines. In times of uncertainty, it can be tempting to interpret composure as distance or discipline as detachment. Brokaw's message suggested otherwise. Strength and vulnerability can exist together. Calm words can carry deep emotion, and sometimes, the most supportive response from the public is patience rather than judgment.